Whispers of contempt. The chamber of the Galactic Concord gleamed with crystalline walls and hovering light orbs, a space meant to symbolize unity among the stars. Yet the air was thick with mockery, not diplomacy. Delegates from 100 worlds sat in their tiered seats, their voices a chorus of disdain. At the center, on a modest platform without ornamentation, stood Ambassador Elias Revic of Earth. He did not look like much compared to the towering insectoid Karakesh or the glittering crystalline Vaith. His frame was unarmored, his hair streaked with gray, his clothing a simple dark suit instead of the elaborate crests and robes worn by others. But his eyes were steady, unwavering. Order, the presiding arbiter chirped, though its mandibles clicked in amusement. The Terran delegate huzzed the floor. Again, Elias inclined his head, voice calm. Esteemed counselors, this is the third time in 5 decades that human colonies have been harassed along the frontier. Trade routes burned, families slaughtered, and always, justice deferred. We have abided by Concord law, filed the grievances, endured the delays. Yet no sanction falls on the aggressors. No restitution is made. How long do you expect my people to endure? A ripple of dismissive laughter spread across the chamber. The scaled ambassador of Azorath leaned forward, teeth glinting. Humans speak of endurance. You are softworlders. You arrived in our Concord barely 4 centuries ago and already act as though you deserve the respect of ancients. Another voice joined, a Vaith whose crystalline body pulsed with sardonic light. Perhaps humans are incapable of surviving in the wider galaxy without their endless petitions. Every decade they whine in you. The words drew a scattered applause from their allies. Elias's jaw tightened, but his voice remained even. We came in peace. We sought cooperation. But peace does not mean blindness. Do not mistake restraint for weakness. More laughter. A Karakesh delegate hissed. Restraint? Or cowardice? If you were truly dangerous, you would act instead of begging in this hall. Elias allowed the words to settle, his silence louder than rebuttal. The presiding arbiter finally dismissed him with a wave of clawed hands. The Concord recognizes no formal breach of treaty. The Terran grievance is denied. And just like that, the matter was closed. On the long shuttle ride back to the human embassy, Elias stared at the void outside the viewport. Stars wheeled in their patient arcs, indifferent to the squabbles of mortals. His aide, a young woman named Mara, finally broke the silence. So, how long can this continue? Every time we bring evidence, every time we speak, they laugh. Elias's lips pressed into a thin line. They mistake our silence for surrender. They think patience is endless. Is it? Mara asked softly. He looked at her then, and for the first time she saw not just the diplomat but the soldier he had once been. A man who had commanded fleets during Earth's early defense against raiders before stepping into politics. His gaze was cold iron. No, he said, patience always ends. Far away, in the frontier systems, that patience was tested again. The colony of New Carthage burned under the assault of privateers who just happened to fly Zorath colors. Thousands lay dead. The Concord would call it an accident, a misunderstanding, perhaps the work of rogue elements. But to the survivors, it was another message written in blood. Humanity's life was cheap in the eyes of the galaxy. Word of the massacre traveled fast. Across human space, anger spread like fire through dry fields. Yet official channels remained silent. No declaration of war, no public threats, only the steady withdrawal of ships from shared patrols, the quiet rerouting of convoys, the darkening of outlying embassies. Alien commentators laughed at the silence. The Terrans sulk, they said on open channels. They bark, then crawl back to their dirtball home. But a few, sharper than the rest, began to notice something unsettling. The humans were not sending protests anymore. Their representatives sat through sessions with tight mouths and watchful eyes, saying less and less. Their fleets, once dispersed along Concord trade lanes, were vanishing into uncharted space. One Karakesh captain, watching the stars beyond his patrol zone, muttered to his crew, "Predators go quiet before they strike." His words were dismissed as paranoia. But in the cold halls of the Terran embassy, Ambassador Elias Revick drafted his final report. He wrote with steady hands, each word deliberate. We have bent. We have endured. But the patience of Earth is not infinite. When it shatters, the galaxy will remember. He signed his name, sealed the message, and sent it not to the Concord, but directly to Sol. The silence after that message would prove far louder than any speech he had ever given. Sparks in the void. The marketplace on Velas Prime was a bright and bustling place, a jewel of the outer rim where dozens of species bartered under towers of glass and steel. Humans had lived and traded here for nearly a century, tolerated as quiet merchants who kept to themselves. That morning, the Terran Trade Guild opened its stall as usual. Crates of tools, medicines, and simple foods that had made them popular among the locals. By evening, the street was a graveyard. It began as a protest, orchestrated with precision. Hired agitators stormed the Terran stall, shouting accusations that humans hoarded resources, cheated on weights, undermined local business. Stones flew, then knives, then plasma fire. By the time security forces arrived, the stall was ash, and every human who had worked there lay dead, save one. She was a child, no more than 9. Dust and blood streaked her face as she crouched by the bodies of her parents, her small hands shaking. "Wake up," she whispered again and again, though no one did. When security finally dragged her away, she did not resist. She simply stayed at the sky with hollow eyes. News of the massacre traveled faster than official channels could contain it. Hollow footage spread across the network, captured by hundreds of casual recorders. Billions across the galaxy watched the terrified little girl clutching her mother's dress, screaming for help that never came. The Concord convened an emergency session, but not to deliver justice. The chamber was packed, voices buzzing. The presiding arbiter raised its mandibles in mock solemnity. "Delegates, we must address this unfortunate incident." Elias Revick sat rigid at his station, his hands folded, face expressionless. When granted the floor, he stood, his voice carrying without strain. On Velas Prime, 37 humans were butchered in public. The authorities stood idle until it was done. This was no accident. It was planned. A child survived, by chance alone. How many times will you call deliberate slaughter a misunderstanding? The Zorath delegate leaned back, scales glittering in amusement. Riots happen. Traders incite locals with greed. Perhaps your people provoked the crowd. Should the Concord be dragged into every street brawl? Murmurs of agreement rippled across the chamber. Elias's eyes narrowed. Street brawl? They were unarmed. They were families. The crystalline Vaith ambassador pulsed a mocking violet. Humans endure anything. That is your greatest trait. Endurance. Surely you will recover from this, as you always do. Laughter again. Cynical. Cruel. Elias did not laugh. He did not raise his voice. He simply said, "Then remember this day, for none of you will ever forget what comes next." And with that, he sat today. The silence unsettled the chamber more than any outburst could have. The Zorath delegate snorted, but his claws tapped the desk in faint unease. The Karakesh hissed quietly, glancing at their aides. The Vaith pulsed dimmer, though they said nothing. Because Elias had not argued. He had not begged. He had not threatened in the old human way, with fire and fury. He had spoken with a cold finality, as though a decision had already been made. The Concord voted as expected. No sanctions, no reparations, no acknowledgement of responsibility. The incident was filed away as civil unrest. Outside the chamber, corridors that once rang with human footsteps grew empty. Embassies shuttered overnight, their staff evacuated. Trade convoys that had connected human colonies to the wider Concord vanished from the lanes. Patrol ships once stationed at joint outposts quietly returned to Sol. At first, the galaxy mocked. Commentators filled the airwaves. The Terrans sulk in their corner. They withdraw because they are weak. They cannot endure the heat of true galactic life. But others began to whisper a different story. A Kalari trader reported that a Terran supply station, long thought abandoned, was bristling with new construction, towering spires and sealed hangars that swallowed freighters whole. A Marrakesh scout noted that Terran ships no longer used civilian transponders. They ran dark, silent, impossible to track. A Vaith mercenary claimed to have seen a fleet of black-holed warships vanish into slipspace without leaving a ripple. These rumors spread like shadow fire, impossible to confirm yet impossible to dismiss. And always, in the background, that footage remained. The human child crying in the ruins, played again and again on every network. For the first time, alien citizens, not leaders, began to question whether their governments had gone too far. The image did not fade. It burned itself into collective memory, a haunting echo of innocence broken. On Earth, the footage played once in the halls of government. Then it was sealed, archived, never shown again. Not because they wanted to forget, but because they never would. In a secure chamber deep beneath Geneva Dome, the Terran High Council gathered. Military commanders and civilian leaders sat together, their faces grim. Elias Revik's final words to the Concord hung over them like prophecy. The oldest among them, Admiral Sutto, spoke first. "We've given them every chance. We bent until our backs broke. Now they laugh at the blood of our children." Silence followed. No one disagreed. At last, Chairwoman Amani spoke. Her voice was steady, final. "Then we stopped bending. Prepare the directive." Every officer in the chamber rose in unison. They did not cheer. They did not smile. They simply saluted. The long patience of humanity had ended. And in the void between stars, the spark was lit. The shattered veil. The first to vanish was a Marrakesh raiding fleet. 6 cruisers and a dozen frigates slipped into Terran space expecting easy prey. They had done so for decades, harassing convoys, plundering frontier colonies, always confident that the humans would file complaints instead of firing weapons. This time, they intercepted what appeared to be a lumbering convoy of haulers near the Dagon Rift. The raiders approached with mocking hails. Then the haulers' transponders went dark. Their hulls shimmered, panels unfolding to reveal hidden weapons arrays. Sleek shadows emerged from the rift itself, ships with no markings, their surfaces a dull matte black that drank starlight. The human fleet had been waiting. The battle lasted less than a minute. Marrakesh cruisers launched their opening volleys, only to watch them vanish against invisible barriers. The black ships replied with beams that sliced through shields and armor as though they were mist. By the time the raiders realized they were outmatched, their communications were jammed, their engines disabled, their hulls torn open. None survived to flee. No distress call escaped. The convoy was not a convoy, it was bait. Reports trickled to the Concord, fragmented, conflicting. Whispers of new Terran warships spread quickly, dismissed officially as panic. Yet days later, entire Zorath patrols vanished along the frontier. A Vaith mercenary fleet sent to teach the humans a lesson simply ceased transmission after entering Sol-adjacent space. Then came the strikes. On 3 different worlds, orbital defense grids once thought impregnable fell silent. Not to bombardment, but to infiltration. Systems crashed, power plants overloaded, shields shut down, all at the exact moment Terran fleets arrived in orbit. The defenders barely had time to raise weapons before their command centers went dark. The galaxy reeled. Inside the Concord chamber, panic replaced laughter. Delegates shouted over one another, their tones stripped of arrogance. "They are launching coordinated attacks. Our colonies burn while they speak nothing. Where do they get this technology?" The presiding arbiter tried to restore order, but fear had no patience for rules. Only one voice cut through the chaos, Elias Revik. He stood calmly as he always had, though now silence spread in his wake. 4 centuries we endured. We suffered raids, insults, massacres. We asked for justice, and you mocked us. Now you see the consequence. We were patient. We were merciful. You mistook that for weakness. The Zorath delegate hissed, but there was no laughter this time. Only the grinding of claws on metal. "You cannot fight us all. The Concord will unite." Elias met his eyes. "Then unite. It will make no difference." And indeed, unity made no difference. the largest fleet ever assembled. Over 200 ships from 5 species set course for Sol, intending to blockade Earth and end Terran defiance before it spread further. They arrived to find the solar system seemingly unguarded. Earth hung quiet and vulnerable, its orbital docks empty. Then the shadows moved. Colossal structures rose from the dark side of the moon, from the depths of Mars canyons, from hidden stations in the asteroid belt. These were not ships but fortresses, immense defense platforms, dormant until this very moment. Their surfaces unfolded like flowers of steel, revealing rail cannons the length of cities, missile silos the size of towers, and arrays of weaponry no species in the galaxy had ever catalogued. The fleet charged bravely. They died swiftly. Rail slugs traveling at fractions of light speed punched through dreadnoughts as though they were paper. Energy lances cut formations apart with surgical precision. Swarms of autonomous drones, released in the millions, consumed anything that tried to flee. Within 12 minutes, the greatest fleet in Concord history was debris scattered across Sol's outer orbit. The footage, captured by desperate survivors before their signals went silent, spread across the galaxy like a nightmare. The truth was undeniable now. Humans had not been idle. For centuries they had watched, learned, and prepared. Every insult, every massacre, every betrayal had been a brick in the wall of resolve. While the Concord mocked their restraint, humanity built weapons for the day patience would shatter. On worlds across the galaxy, civilians whispered in dread. If that is what they kept hidden, what else waits in their dark? They said humans were harmless. Harmless, came the reply. Then what do you call this? In backroom councils, leaders who had once sneered at humanity now begged their advisors for answers. None came. The humans had revealed only a fraction of their strength, yet it was enough to tilt the balance of the galaxy. In Sol, as wreckage still burned in orbit, Elias Revik stood once more before the Terran High Council. He looked weary, but not uncertain. It has begun, he said simply. They thought us broken. Now they understand. No one asked if they should stop. No one wondered if peace could still be salvaged. They all knew. The galaxy had chosen mockery over mercy. Humanity had answered, and the answering would not end soon. The silence that followed. The chamber of the Galactic Concord had never been so empty. Half the seats lay abandoned. The delegates fled or killed when their fleets were shattered. Those who remained no longer jeered or scoffed. They sat hunched, their voices hushed, their eyes darting nervously whenever the chamber doors opened. When Ambassador Elias Revik entered, no one spoke. He wore the same plain suit he had always worn, but the air shifted as if the gravity itself had changed. There were no guards at his back. None were needed. He stepped onto the central platform, adjusted the microphone, and looked around the chamber with calm, steady eyes. "I will not take much of your time," he began. His voice was not raised, yet every word carried. For centuries, humanity asked for respect. We sought cooperation. We endured humiliation, violence, and betrayal. We bent, again and again, for the sake of peace. You laughed at us for it. You mistook patience for weakness. He let the silence stretch, forcing them to sit with his words. You were wrong. A ripple of unease spread across the chamber. A crystalline faith pulsed faintly, attempting to speak. Elias raised one hand. The ambassador fell silent. The time of patience is over. From this day forward, we do not ask. We do not beg. We will not return to these chambers to plead for the lives of our people. Instead, we bring terms. Gasps echoed. Some shifted as though to protest, but none spoke first. Elias continued. First, reparations for every colony burned, every life taken. Paid in resources, not excuses. Second, the disarmament of those who preyed upon us. Your fleets will be dismantled under Terran oversight. Third, recognition of Terran sovereignty across the frontier. These regions will be ours, uncontested. They are not yours to squabble over any longer. The Zorath delegate slammed a claw against the desk. This is conquest. No, Elias's interruption was sharp, final. If it were conquest, your worlds would already burn. We did not come to rule. We came to end the cycle of mockery and blood. You will live under new rules. If you refuse, you will not live at all." The words fell like hammers. No threats, no shouting, just cold fact. Beyond the chamber, the galaxy held its breath. On border worlds, alien civilians whispered about Terran fleets appearing and vanishing like phantoms. On Concord raider strongholds, survivors spoke of cities left standing, their leaders gone, their weapons dismantled. Humanity was not exterminating. They were correcting. That made the fear deeper still. In the Vaith capital, parents warned their children at bedtime, "Do not anger the Terrans." They remember. On Zorath slave ships, freed captives whispered prayers of gratitude to the humans who had torn their chains apart. Everywhere, the lesson spread. Mercy had been squandered, and now only fear remained. Back on Earth, in the domed council halls of Geneva, the Terran High Council gathered in silence. Outside, fragments of the defeated Concord fleet still burned in Sol's orbit, a reminder of how close the war had come to humanity's home. Admiral Soto stood beside Elias as reports streamed in. Raider enclaves eliminated, reparations flowing, Concord fleets dismantled under Terran command. "It's working," Soto said. "They are falling in line." "They don't have a choice," Elias replied quietly. He gazed at the stars on the screen before them. "But fear is not the foundation of peace. One day, we will have to decide what comes after." Chairwoman Imani, her voice heavy with years of leadership, answered him. "After? There is no after. They carved this future with their cruelty. We warned them, Elias. They chose mockery. Now they live under the shadow they created." No one argued. In the Concord chamber, the final vote was cast. Reparations accepted. Disarmament ratified. Sovereignty recognized. Not one delegate opposed the motion. None dared. Elias closed his datapad, bowed once without warmth, and turned to leave. As he walked out, the presiding arbiter whispered, almost to itself, "What are you now, Terran? Peacekeeper? Conqueror?" Elias paused at the threshold. His reply was quiet, but the entire chamber heard it. "Remember us as we are. We were patient. You broke that, and no species will ever forget the moment our patience shattered." He walked away, leaving only silence in his wake. Across the galaxy, that silence lingered for generations. Alien children grew up with stories of the shattering, the day Earth ceased bending and forced the stars to bend instead. No one dared test them again, because the lesson was carved into history itself. Mercy has limits. Patience breaks. And when humanity's patience broke, the galaxy trembled.